Welcome to the Glen Alex Show, where your health matters, set your mind, let it flow. Joyful, connected, confident, complete. Let Glen Alex help you back on your feet. The Glen Alex
Hello, world, and welcome back to the Glen Alex Show. Our mission is for you to be joyful, connected, confident, and complete. The life experience we call wealth, WELLTH, which is health plus other riches. I'm Glen Alex, the wealth counselor, licensed clinical social worker, and author of Living in Total Health. And my life's work is about health because healthy people are more genuine, healthy people are more loving, and healthy people are more giving. Let me repeat myself. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healthy people do not intentionally harm self or others. Let that sink in, folks. All the abuse, the deceit, manipulation, and violence going on in our world right now is not perpetrated by healthy people. The perpetrators are unhealthy people who have voids in their lives that they fill with harm. Healthy people, I do believe, are the key to healing the world's wounds and uniting us. So with that said, please help me welcome my guest, Liz Ortenburger. I hope I said that correctly.
You did great.
Okay, to the Glen Alex Show. Hello.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for making time. How are you doing today?
Oh, good for a Monday.
Right? Okay, so please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, so my name is Liz Ortenburger, and I'm the CEO of SafeNest, which is a large domestic violence agency located in Clark County, Nevada. And while we're in Clark County, we serve almost our entire work is in Clark County, but we do serve some of the other places in Nevada as well.
Okay, great. And how long have you been with SafeNest?
Almost 4 years.
Okay. And about this just came to me, about how many people per year do you serve?
Anywhere from 25,000 to 30,000 domestic violence victims each year. We also work with batterers and children affected by the epidemic of domestic violence. So your opening struck me because a lot of the work we do, particularly with children in domestic violence households, is just that. You know, unhealthy household is unhealthy kids, and unhealthy kids perpetrate the cycles, right? So 76% of kids growing up in a domestic violence household will repeat that cycle as victim or as batterer. So it's generational. Absolutely.
I'm sorry. I was just blown away by that number. I didn't expect 25,000 or more.
Yeah.
That is a lot of violence, people. Wow. Okay. So can you just give a real clear definition of what domestic violence is? Sometimes people will hear that and, you know, it can be vague. So I want people to clearly understand what it is.
Yeah, so domestic violence at its purest sense is any time one person in a relationship is using power and control against another party in the relationship. So domestic violence can be interrelational in a family. It can be between a husband and a wife. It can be between a boyfriend and a girlfriend. It can be between two homosexual partners. It can be between an adult child to their elderly parent. There are all kinds of ways that power and control model will show itself, but that's the root. It's using power and control to coerce another party into doing what it is you want, and that can be emotional, physical, or psychological.
Absolutely. And in the work that I did in domestic violence in another state, I too worked with both the battered women and the batterers. I didn't work with the children as much, but people tend to think that they don't understand what leads to the actual physical violence.
Right.
Can you speak a little bit to that? Because if I'm on a date with someone and, the first thing they do is slap me, then that's the end
Yeah.
of that date, right? It doesn't start there.
No, it doesn't. And one of the things that we do for a lot of our victims who are survivors who are walking now, ready to sort of go into new relationships, is to talk about what are those early warning signs. Whether you choose to return to your abusive partner who may have also sought treatment, or find a new partner, you need to understand what the signs are that lead down that path, right? So some of the early things that we talk to folks about, the phrase that you hear a lot now is gaslighting, right? So anytime you have an opinion, you're just bombarded with an opinion from the other side that just basically wears you down, and you either adopt the other opinion or just stop the conversation. That's a really great early warning sign of an unhealthy dynamic. And really, so much of what we see in domestic violence, we'll hear our victims, particularly in our victims group, say, well, it was just an argument that got out of control. Well, no, it was a place where you were standing up for yourself and having an opinion and a point of view, and your partner couldn't accept that, and he or she started to abuse you. That's not an argument that got out of control. That is someone trying to exert the power and control dynamic to get you to be in lockstep with them. So those are the kind of early warning signs. Are you taken seriously? Do you have an opinion? Are you valued? If you do something like lose your car keys, how does that go down? Is it, shared partnership in that you're both looking for them? Or is it, I can't believe you were this stupid and you couldn't find your car keys? Now, those are early indicators of relationships that may be ultimately very healthy as well, but it's the way that it escalates. And what we really talk about, and you'll hear victims who are walking that path of becoming survivors talk about, is that quiet stripping away of the person that you were. So you start to look for those other larger warning signs, which is isolation from family and friends, which can be compacted by the fact that those that are close to you, that love you, that see your life maybe going into this unhealthy dynamic, maybe saying negative things about the person that you've chose to have in your life. He or she may be saying, look, they don't like me. They're trying to turn you against me, right? So all very complicated dynamics. What I tell folks, and when my counseling staff works with folks on, is you got to check in with you, right? Really check in with you. Don't make excuses for people in your life. How are you feeling? Are you fulfilled? Did you like how that went down? And if you didn't like how that went down, is this a relationship where you can sort of say, hey, I'm unhappy with how that argument went. I feel unheard. And if you did say that, how would that manifest itself? So those early warning signs are the places where you can choose to off ramp. A lot of great survivors in domestic violence who are incredible women, because primarily 85% of domestic violence victims are female. They take on the batterer's baggage, right? So as I told you up front, 76% of kids coming out of domestic violence households repeat the cycle as victim or as batterer. Well, if I'm growing up in that household as someone who may potentially be a victim, I probably saw my mom or the female role in that relationship take on a lot, right?
Right.
And there's some really fascinating studies coming out around this, particularly in Black communities, where the matriarchal member, that grandmother that everyone gravitates around, how much she takes on, how much toxic stress she takes on, that may include abuse in that relationship, because she's the one, she just has this ownership of the glue that she's holding this family together. And if you're witnessing that as a child growing up in that, you think that then can be your role.
Yeah.
And that the abuse is just part of how it all goes, but your job is to fix the abuser.
Yes.
So there's all of these dynamics that go into what can create a very easy journey into the world of being in an incredibly unhealthy relationship.
That's some really good information, and you put it in a way that was easily understandable. So I'm hoping people who are hearing this will start to have a deeper insight and understanding of what domestic violence is, and and get out and support and help the cause. I really want that. So tell me what impact the shutdown has had on domestic violence.
Right. So I always preface this by saying I am so incredibly proud of SafeNest as an agency because COVID hit and it wasn't, oh my gosh, we have to figure out how to limit services and keep its staff safe. It was, how do we grow as big as possible because the need this is going to create in our world is going to be massive.
Okay.
And so with board of directors support, and we got CARES Act funding, PPP loans, we had some great large donors come to the table. We really expanded our footprint. So what happened in Clark County, Nevada is the Shade Tree, which works with homeless women and children and has some overlap into domestic violence, and Safe House, that's a smaller agency in Henderson that runs a shelter, they both greatly reduced their service capacity. So we started to get their overflow. That was one instance of like, oh gosh, we're going to need to really increase our bed count here. The other thing that happened is, so anytime you have a disaster in a community, we saw this after the October 1 shooting. We see this in communities where there's a hurricane or an earthquake or wildfires, any massive stressor. All of the folks that are prone to using violence, so all the potential and people that have battered before, they are all triggered by this stress at the same time. So this stuff doesn't create a batterer, but it can absolutely bring it out and enhance battery within a relationship. The other thing that happens in these highly stressful environments is the economy. So we started to see recession-like behavior, which is another time financial stress is one of the leading causes of abuse in relationships because it's that compounded stress. So we have the situational stress, the economic stress, and then we asked you all to stay home together. So we created this just perfect storm for domestic violence to go through the roof. So when all of that happened, we have a response program with our Metro Police Department where we send volunteer advocates out on calls, domestic violence 911 calls, where an arrest is made or there's probable cause for an arrest. We expanded that program to an even larger footprint, and we added an entire hotel component to our shelter so that we could deal with the increase of bed nights that we were going to need even when our main campus is full. Okay. And we've been doing that throughout. There is nobody that is in a lethal situation that is not found shelter with us from a domestic violence perspective. So all of that has been, I have the privilege of being the CEO, but I have an incredible staff of 81 who work for me, who are the ones putting the mask on and going on a 911 call. They're the ones sitting in the hallway at the shelter watching 3 little kids while mom gets treatment for her broken arm or black eye. They are doing this incredible work in such a larger scale, and they're doing it so well. So I'm very, very proud of the agency. I wish we weren't in this situation. I wish domestic violence normally wasn't high, but we're high here in Clark County. We are the 4th most dangerous place in the country for women being murdered by men related to domestic violence.
Really?
Yeah. Now, our Metro response program is bringing the DV homicide rates down because we're connecting victims with services much earlier in their cycle of violence. But yeah, we are a high domestic violence homicide community to begin with, and then we add the layers of complexity in the pandemic. We say here, we're the epidemic inside the pandemic, right? We are that and my PR department and a lot of our media partners have done a great job of making sure we're not forgotten in this space, because it would be easy to not be talking about domestic violence, but we've done a lot of media during this time, which has been good.
Well, there was so much focus on COVID and masks and staying home and the financial ruin that, we need to pay more attention to the problems that the shutdown has caused for domestic violence and suicide and abuse in general. So that's why I wanted to have this episode. Just, do you have a number of how many women in Clark County are murdered by their partners?
So our average in Clark County every year is about 24. 24 to 28, kind of vacillate between those two numbers. And last year it was only 16. And big reason for that is, so I can tell you the places that we piloted our Metro Response Program, one's the northwest part of our city. They on average would have 5 homicides a year related to domestic violence. When we've had the program there now for 3 years, they're averaging 1. So we've taken that from 5 to 1. The same with the Spring Valley corridor. They would have on average 6 to 7 DV homicides a year. We've done the same thing. We've got that to 1, the average of 1. So we're doing the right kind of work. But, one of the overwhelming realities to domestic violence and homicide is guns. 80% of our clients victims of homicide related to domestic violence are murdered by a firearm. And we have incredibly loose firearm laws. We now see where we have the municipalities of North Las Vegas, and Henderson have actually written more lenient DV criminal code because they can't take the gun away without a jury trial, because our Supreme Court weighed in on removal of firearms from homes. So it gets very politically complicated. But if we truly want DV homicides to be 0, which is what I think we work for every single day,
Absolutely.
We at some point as a state are absolutely going to have to tackle this idea that guns do not kill domestic violence victims, because they absolutely do. 80% of the time, it's a gun.
Okay. Wow. That's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Which is one of the reasons why when we're doing safety planning with clients, if there's a gun in the home and you've been threatened with that weapon and there's recent job loss, that is almost the perfect storm for homicide, right? When we look at national data around when homicide occurs, the gun that it's already been threatened against you and the loss of a job can be absolutely, they're huge red flags. The only other thing that we add to that is if you've been strangled as any part of your domestic violence. Those are sort of the massive red flags we look for in the field to get people safe immediately.
Okay. Well, speaking of guns, I've come across a couple of articles that connect domestic violence to mass shootings.
Yes.
One article said at least 60% of the mass shootings where it involves 4 or more victims are related to domestic violence in some way.
Right. So what we're talking about when we're talking about batterers, a lot of the conversation has got to get louder and it has to get more well researched. The problem with how the U.S. has tackled domestic violence is we've sort of said, okay, there's a tumor here, but we're not going to deal with this tumor. We're just going to deal with the symptoms of the tumor. I mean, even when we think about the name Violence Against Women's Act, we didn't say, let's tackle toxic masculinity and make this world safer for everybody. We said, oh, let's deal with the violence against the women. We didn't talk about the primarily men that are perpetrating this world, right? So right. 85% of our victims are female, and 85% of our perpetrators are male. But how much funding goes to understanding that male batterer and the world in which that they are? No one is born saying, "Oh my gosh, I hope someday I really get to abuse my partner in life that I want to love." This is a learned behavior, and toxic masculinity, and more research is starting to come out around it. And there has been research for years, just not in a large sense. It's not fully understood. And so because we don't understand it, we don't do anything about it. And because it deals with men, there is a hesitancy within the domestic violence movement, and I see this amongst my peer agencies, to say, oh, we can't shift focus from the women. We can't shift focus from the women. I'm going, but wait a second. This is as if we were cancer victims saying, I'm just going to deal with the symptoms of your cancer. I'm not actually going to want to understand the tumor, remove the tumor, or why the tumor got there to begin with. So we've been short-sighted, I think, really since the 90s on how we actually start to look at large-scale, meaningful change in this space. And Clark County is as much to blame. The school district is as much to blame in this as anyone else. We can't go in there and teach healthy relationships curriculum to young men and young women. There are so many covenants on what we're able to speak about. And, teenagers, you're not talking honestly to them. They've tuned out. So if we really want wide sweeping change, it's the idea of understanding all of these things. And then how do we have conversations with young people? Because we can do all of the work with victims and batterers. But the fact is that's all secondary because the abuse has already happened. Imagine if we could be having these conversations in our schools well beyond. So a young woman at 13 or 14 would know that your boyfriend telling you that you need to have sex with him because that's part of your duties is not a healthy relationship. What would it look like differently if we really were having these honest conversations with young people? Because I'm telling you, that's what they're dealing with. And without clear guidance, and 76,000 of our kids are living in households where domestic violence is happening. They don't have clear guidance. So we're discrediting that group.
Yeah. That to me is absolutely ridiculous that we don't focus on the mindset of the batterers. I mean, that is at least half of the problem. I mean, it's one thing, yes, to help the primarily women who are victimized, have services for the children. I mean, those things are important. You're not going to stop it though,
right?
If you allow the mindset to just go. I can't even speak.
Yep.
It drives me crazy because a lot of my work is about the mindset, because it is the mindset that creates our beliefs and our choices and our behaviors.
Yep.
So if you don't address that with people who use violence to get their way, how are you going to fix it?
Right. Right. And, so 18,000 court cases hit Clark County court systems every year for domestic violence. And part of the drawback that we see is we deal with all 18,000 of those batters, aside from the felons, in pretty much the same way. So I can't discern whether or not this was a relationship. They didn't have good conflict resolution skills. Somebody pushed somebody, and here we are, versus this is pretty severe. She's here with us with a broken nose and 2 black eyes, and she's reporting this is the 7th time she's been abused in the last 2 months. Those 2 examples that I'm giving you are treated exactly the same in our court system. So there is sort of systematic issues in this, and sometimes you sit down and you try to say, well, here's the spaghetti bowl. Where are the answers? By far, the easiest answer for all of this is to invest in our young people, particularly our young people who are identified to be in domestic violence households. And we've partnered with CCSD on legislation in that space. But really what has to come behind that is the funding and the work to be able to work with those young people in a larger way. And so federal funding that comes into domestic violence agencies like ours is almost 100% earmarked for victims, which we get frustrated with because we say, what about the prevention side of this? So yes. Prevention side is really privately funded, privately raised dollars. And I'm telling you, for every $1 we invest in a child for prevention, we are saving thousands of dollars in working with that child as a batterer or as a victim. Not only at our agency, but as a society, right? So that's really when we push for private funding and things like that. These are the places where the system, the grant funding falls short of actually dealing with the entire epidemic.
Okay. Wow. Okay, this is more than I thought I would get. I'm so happy to hear it. Thank you. So with the shutdown and loss of employment, I'm pretty sure your donations have gone down.
The one area that we've lost significant funding is marriage license. So most folks don't know, but a portion of every marriage license, a portion of that fee set aside to fund agencies like SafeNest doing this work in the state of Nevada. It's fantastic fund. Our portion of that fund is normally $1.2 million a year. This year it was 0.2. So we lost $1 million in funding that we are trying to recoup. Now, not only are we a nonprofit, we run a good business here. So we're doing all of the right things to fill that gap. But you're absolutely right. I mean, donations are down, and it's a tough time for people, and we understand that. Unfortunately, we're in one of these spaces where your revenue is down, but your customer client base is massively increased. So it's how do we bridge that gap? Yeah.
Right. So is there anything that, aside from money, any gifts in kind that you need?
Yeah, so you're spot on. Money's always great. And one of the things that SafeNest does as a revenue arm is we run a secondhand business. So we don't have any retail shops, but we collect secondhand things. We sort through them to keep what we might need for clients, but then the bulk of it gets monetized through savers. So we are happy to come to people's homes and pick up their gently used goods. We don't do furniture. I like to let people know that, but as folks are cleaning out their closets or all those kinds of things, they can just go to safenest.org and you can fill out a little form there. It tells you when we're going to be in your neighborhood and you're set to go, and you just leave the bags out and a truck comes by that day and picks them up. That's immensely helpful. We're getting into the Christmas season, so the holiday season. So we do holiday Christmas. It's really a magnificent thing to be part of. We let the mom shop for the kids, and then we let the kids shop for each other and a shop for mom. And we do that all through donated items, and we do it at our warehouse. And then once our client base is done, we open it up to lots of other nonprofits. So anything our clients haven't needed, we share that wealth with the nonprofit community. So if folks are interested in being part of that, they certainly can reach out to us through safenest.org as well on the contact us and say, I'd like to help. I'd like to help with the holiday drive. But beyond that, it's we have a 5K going on right now, so people can register for the 5K. That's really helpful. But anything that people can give, either used goods or financially, all of it stays here in Clark County, and all of it funds the work that we are doing to get folks to a better place in their lives, free of violence. So.
Okay, amazing work. Amazing work. Thank you so much for what you're doing. What is one nugget that you want to leave everyone with?
Yeah, so I will tell you that all of us have people in our circles that are probably suffering from some sort of domestic violence. It just makes sense from a numbers standpoint. If you think there's someone in your circle, you don't have to address it, but don't not address it either. And so what I mean is be a little bit incognito. So what you can say to a friend or family member is, hey, I don't know what's going on. I've noticed a little shift. I've been doing some research or understanding some things differently, but if you ever need me to call 911 or you need me to come to your house, just use the word broccoli twice in a sentence. What we've done there is we've said, I'm here for you. I'm non-judgmental, and I don't really know what's happening, but just in case. And I will tell you that someday may save the life of a friend or family member. And that is the way that you can lend a helping hand without going in and grabbing someone and removing them from a relationship, because that won't be the right answer. Just letting people know that you're there is the biggest thing that you can do to help a friend or family member, because they will leave the relationship when they're ready to leave the relationship, and you cannot force it. As much as we'd want to sometimes make that happen. So if anyone is struggling in a relationship and needs to talk to someone, we have a 24/7 hotline. It's 702-646-4981. You can call or text to that number, or you can chat with us from safenest.org.
Thank you so much for your time
Thank you.
and all of the information and the work you and your employees are doing. I will do what I can to get the word out and to help support what you guys are doing. So
Perfect. Thank you so much.
you are very welcome. You stay well. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Glen Alex Show. I hope you found my conversation with Liz from SafeNest enlightening. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share.
Refresh your spirit with a nourishing thought.
Let me leave you with this nourishing thought. An unknown author said, "Never forget that walking away from something unhealthy is brave, even if you stumble a little on your way to the door." Let's be clear, there's nothing healthy about domestic violence. Home is supposed to be a shelter, a place of love and nurturing. The tragic truth for far too many people is that home hurts. Love is replaced with punches. Coercion is a substitute for nurturing, and boundaries are violated on every level. It is so past time for us to recognize that domestic violence must be stopped. It is absolutely not okay. Domestic violence is not only deadly in the home, it's also deadly in society. Studies are showing that about 60% of the mass shootings involve domestic violence, either by the perpetrator or someone victimized by domestic violence. So domestic violence is a red flag for other violent behavior. So please, please take whatever resources you can afford to share and support the causes that aim to end domestic violence. And until next time, be well.